Have you ever lost your son for 3 days?
No, I don't think so.
Today we're talking about how Mary and Joseph did. Hello and welcome to the Midweek Move, podcast extension of the Healing Place, the podcast where we examine the scriptures line by line, verse by verse, and ask ourselves, what is happening here? Ladies and gentlemen, I am joined again, and I'm very excited about it, by my good friend, Mr. Ben Schmaltz. How you doing, brother?
I am wonderful. Good to see you all again. Well, good to see the cameras that are going to be seeing you, but we're glad you're here tuning in. It's going to be a great day.
Oh, man. Last week we had a really great conversation about Mary and Joseph taking Jesus to be dedicated at the temple, and some powerful things taking place. And what I love, Ben, you have a tendency, I'm just saying this, right? You draw things out of me, man. I love talking with you because I get excited about stuff. And I just so appreciate you taking the time to be here with us.
Absolutely.
And I
love it.
Last week's episode was amazing. And this week we're driving into an interesting conversation because I don't know, some people today would call it poor parenting, but we're going to find out why it's not necessarily as we continue our conversation in Luke chapter 2. And again, we're now 4 episodes into the book of Luke. And we're only in chapter 2. I really want to encourage you guys, go back to the playlist, check out Luke, check out the intro. Pastor and I had several great conversations. I think we did 6 episodes on Luke chapter 1 alone. And then before you, we had Doug Parker from Destiny Church and Direct Message Ministries. And he and I handled the birth of Jesus. Now we're in this section. There's so much richness in the scriptures. I mean, you and I covered about 20 verses last week, and it was like an hour-long conversation. But there's some richness if we're willing to ask questions. And really go, what's going on here?
Right.
And so I want to encourage you, if you guys are doing Bible studies, don't just read the scriptures. Dig into them. Ask questions, man. And if we can help you with those questions, reach out to us, mediahub@thpshreveport.com. We love to help you walk through those things. So also you can message Ben because I'll have his socials in the comment section down below. All right, let's jump into it. Starting in verse 41. Now his parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up according to custom. I'm going to pause right there because, again, this kind of reemphasizes what we talked about last week, that they were like, we're doing what the Lord has called us to do.
They're doing it, dotting every I.
Every I. So in Jewish society, there's 3 main feasts that they have: Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacle. And again, these are things that this is what they do. And if they can, they go to Jerusalem. If nothing else, they really make an effort to be in Jerusalem for Passover itself. It's very important. Now, at the age of 12, this gets interesting because at age 12, 13, that's where you have what they call the bar mitzvah, where a young man becomes a man.
Yeah.
And apparently, they really work to make sure the child is at least in Jerusalem for Passover around that time frame. Because what happens is the bar mitzvah, they become what they call a man of the covenant. And during this time frame, because again, this isn't just a party. Some people think this is just a celebration, but this is a very spiritual moment also.
Yeah, sure.
There's a lot of things. And so they want their child to be present to really understand what's going on. So gathered in Jerusalem, and again, we're painting a picture for you guys. It's not just, the normal people. The top scholars of the people, the most religious and pious individuals are present here at the temple in Jerusalem for this celebration. And that's going to become important for us here in a little bit. But I need you guys to understand what's taking place. This is not just a party, but this is a spiritual and holy moment taking place as they celebrate the Passover that took place. Now, I will say this. If you ever been to a Passover meal, it gets pretty fun. It's pretty wild.
Sure. They know how to celebrate. That's for sure.
So, but I want to ask you this. Why is it important for parents to be intentional about making sure their children take part in spiritual practices like going to church on a weekly basis, being part of what God has for them? Why is that important?
Yeah, well, I think it lays a foundation of our belief. It lays a foundation of living for God and the importance of God. I mean, left on their own, we're naturally gonna tend, humans, childs, adults, all of us, we're gonna just go to the thing that's fun or the thing that's enjoyable or the thing that, and so many of those pleasures that we call fun are things that are just gonna not bring you closer to God.
Word.
And I think when you're young, if you really get a good foundation, you understand the importance, you have a leg up to when you become a young adult, you become a young teenager, older teenager rather, you understand that these temptations are just not worth it. And I don't want to get set. I just listened to a testimony of a guy in our youth group. He's an adult, but he shared in our youth group with our teenagers his testimony about how he was in youth group and then he wandered for about 12 years.
Oh, wow.
And how he wished he wouldn't have wandered for 12 years because he can't get those 12 years back. It was almost like a forewarning. Hey, take it serious, because if you don't take it serious, you'll find yourself. I might not have ever had a chance to come back and be a prodigal son, but I am. That was that testimony, and it's a wonderful testimony. But it was a warning for our students. Hey, don't belittle what's happening in your church and in your life, because God has such a great plan for you. It's important to have that foundation laid so that later in life we're able to stand strong against the attacks of the enemy in this world.
Word. So good. And I appreciate, again, it's that laying that foundation. We've heard testimonies just like that over the years of just, I can't tell there are people who I've known that they went to church as a young man or a young woman and high school hit or ended and they went to college and they just lost their mind. Yeah. I was just talking with a parent the other day who is walking through some stuff with their own adult child. Raised them up in the fear and admonition of the Lord. They were faithful to the church. They were in church. There's I heard an old evangelist old evangelist. He goes, I had a drug problem as a kid. My mama drugged me to church on Sundays, on Sunday nights, on Wednesdays. I had a major drug problem.
Good dad
and
joke.
My friend goes, my daughter had a drug problem because I drug her to church every week.
Yeah.
But now they're an adult. They're on their own thing. He's worried about his daughter.
Sure.
And that's understandable because now they're out of the purview. We kind of talked about this last week about sending a child off but he knows what I remind him is like, you set a foundation for your child.
Sure.
That you love, you care about, you set a foundation.
Yeah.
They know where to go. They know who the Lord is. And they know that if something happens, first off, they know dad's present. Mm-hmm. They know, but they also know the foundation of what the Lord has for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why it's so key for parents. Your kid may not like church. It happens. But lay the foundation. Be respectful, be honest, be caring about it. You know, I'm not telling you, because we had a conversation a while back about on our main YouTube page for the Healing Place about gathering your kids around the table and being intentional about sharing the gospel. And some person, well, that's fine, but it can be overbearing. And there's some parents who are overbearing and dumb about it. And we can see plenty of evidence of that being wrong. But if you are doing it right, you're laying the foundation. Your child has to go, when they become an adult, is this faith of mine or not? Yeah. And so that's why it's intentional about putting them in places where they go, this is safe. Yeah. This is what God looks like. This is where I can return to.
Yeah, it's so good.
So, cool. All right, let's continue on the conversation because this is where things are getting wild with the story about Jesus. Mm-hmm. Starting in verse 43. And when the feast had ended, as they were returning, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents did not know it, but supposing him to be in the group, they went a day's journey. But then they began to search for him among their relatives and acquaintances. And when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem searching for him. And in 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them, asking questions. Let's rewind a little bit because we'll come back to that verse. Again, this is interesting because it kind of gives us a look at the type of community that they were in. Yeah. It's unthinkable today for a parent to go, have you seen our kid? No, I haven't seen him. We'll look for him tomorrow.
That's right.
We don't think about that.
Yeah. I mean, you caught me off guard with the intro of today's episode when you asked me if I ever lost my kid for 3 days, and I was like, "What? No, that's it." But then I'm like, "Oh yeah, put in perspective what we're about to talk about."
Right.
I can't imagine not kissing my child on the forehead before they go to sleep if I'm anywhere near them.
Right.
So to even know, like, well, where's my, the culture was different. Probably they were in a big group of people traveling all together. Mm-hmm. Maybe they thought grandma had them or grandpa had them or somebody, auntie, uncle, somebody's watching little Jesus out there. Maybe he's a man now, so we don't tuck him in at night. I don't know who's had that bar mitzvah, but I can't imagine a world where I'm making any kind of journey and the first thing on my mind is the safety of my children.
Right.
My wife would kill me if that happened. Like I would be dead. I would be missing. You guys would be looking for me. Right. Man, it's wild. Just that mind as a father, it's just a wild story. I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's so practical. Like, sometimes we don't always know where our kids are.
Exactly.
Kind of figure.
My mom tells a story about when she was a little girl, and after church, her mom is in the kitchen making dinner and stuff like that, and she turns to my mom's siblings, goes, where's Mary Beth? And they're all like, I don't know. And right as they're grabbing the keys to go back to the church to find my mom, the doorbell rings, and my mom's Sunday school teacher there with my mom. my 8-year-old little mom.
Oh, I love Sunday school.
And they're like, you left her at church.
Left her at church.
It happens.
It
Okay.
happens.
It happens.
It does happen.
But what's interesting about this is this really speaks to the type. This wasn't like, we left church. Oh, we forgot about them. They're in a community.
Yeah.
They're in a community that's connected by their common faith that's tight knit. And they go, this is a safe place.
Yeah,
we're in a traveling group, a family. We're talking. Some of them, yes, they're relatives. Some of them are they're people part of their community. There was a trust of the community, and it was healthy. It illustrates the importance of having a strong and healthy faith community that can walk through some stuff. And I know that's a hard thing to see, especially today. We have all these
Different
crazy
society,
stories.
sure.
But how do we foster a safe and healthy community today, Ben?
Yeah. Well, honestly, like, I never had to travel and lose my kid, but when I'm at church, there's a few times where if mom's not there and I have the kids, I don't maybe keep a close eye on them. I'm busy doing the pastoral type duties, talking to people, shaking hands, fixing something wrong in the sound booth, whatever the case may be.
Right.
And, I looked the other Sunday, I looked around, I had Eva with me. My boy usually comes. He's 8 years old. My daughter's 4. 8-year-old knows, hey, it's time for Sunday school. All I have to do is say, hey, go to Sunday school. I had the girl with me this time. The boy stayed home with mom, and they were coming later. And she wanted to go with daddy. So I had her. It's a little more difficult. I'm practicing worship, and I look up. It's 9:20 at this point. We're about to break out of practice and go into our next meeting before the service kicks off at 10. And I look around. I'm like, oh, my goodness, where's my daughter? I haven't seen my daughter in 45 minutes probably. Like, I just forgot about her. And I felt very much probably like this. But it's because, now granted, the kids pastor happened to see my daughter and knew I was on the platform. So she took her the class for me.
Right.
Thank God, because I have a community that I trust.
Right.
Now, not everybody that walks in our church doors is in part of that community initially. Right. So there's still safety precautions and security teams and everybody that's helping keeping everybody safe. Sure. But I had a kids pastor that I knew, well, I hoped was watching my daughter. Again, that was one of the dad fails, but it's so important just to have, I don't know who came up with the phrase. I don't think it's a church phrase, but it takes a village. It takes a community of people to raise family and to be there close. And it's hard to trust people. Yeah. But when you find that right, close knitted family, which I'm sure you guys have here at the Healing Place, we have over at Gateway, it's just a close family where we just feel like, hey, this is a part of our extended family. Right. When we have Thanksgiving, we have Christmas, we're not just with our family, we're inviting people that don't have, we're part of that community that maybe their family's out of town or they don't have, hey, come join us. We're a family. And it's so good to have people that are trustworthy like that to encourage you, to help you in those times. I'm glad there's grandpas in my life that can tell me, hey, when I was a husband or a father, I did this, and this, you should try it out, or don't try this, or this, because, it goes both ways. So those communities are huge. And so find yourself one. Don't be scared to open up. And if you're scared and you're start small. Do a small group. Get 1 or 2. Yeah. Take some people out, not literal date, but like go get coffee with them and just kind of, you don't marry off the first date. When you first meet somebody, you don't get married to them, don't give them all your drama. Just figure out if, hey, it's a trustworthy person. Right. And then as time goes on, you can grow that community a little bit. And it just gets so helpful when you're living life together with somebody.
There are 2 key aspects of the explanation that you had that we need to point out. First off, it's time. Yeah. There's time and investment. People act like they show up at church and should just be like, boom, wide open, we're all good. Right. I don't know you from Adam. We're going to have to work on this type of thing. But also being present. Yeah. I cannot tell you there are people that I've seen over the years that like, well, I don't like church because nobody cares about me. You're not here.
It's hard.
Or I don't like church because nobody deals with it. Have you opened up? Yeah. We had a gentleman that years ago that I knew and kind of complained about church folks across the board. And I love it because he was talking with my associate pastor, Matt, and about just complaining. And he goes, the Bible says that if you want friends, you must first be friendly. Are you being friendly?
That's such wisdom, and it should be common sense, but it's so uncommon. Right. That's such a good. I love that he brought that up. Yeah, that's such a good point.
That's a teaching from the scriptures. Yeah. And again, there's two, I teach a course called Soul Rest every so often with our students and in groups. And it's a great training course of discipleship. And in it, there's a section that talks about two main spiritual disciplines. And they're taught together, confession, fellowship.
Yeah.
They're caught together because of this. In order for us to have true confession with somebody, we had to have fellowship.
Yeah.
But you can't have fellowship until you have confession.
Right.
And when I say confession, I'm not talking about like, all right, tell me all the sins that you have now. All right. But it's confession of like, I'm having a bad day and I've been struggling to sleep.
Yeah.
It's confessions of, I'm trying to figure out what to do with my child right now because they're a bit rambunctious. I'm not sure how to handle things. That's hard to open up.
Yeah.
If you don't have fellowship with people, but you don't really develop that fellowship until you start having that. So it takes you being present. It takes time. It takes the risk of opening up.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is easy. This is this is hard to do, man. It's terrifying.
Sure.
To go, maybe I don't have it all together.
Yep.
And giving people the opportunity to do the right thing, giving people the opportunity to fail. Yeah. And it's hard to build that thing.
Sure.
But when you can, and then when it does, and again, this also requires, again, I put this out there because there are some churches that it's us four, no more.
Right.
It does require the church body to open up. It does require pastors to go, hey, we need to be a little better at things.
Yep.
But when we have that, it becomes a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And at the same time, when you have that, you got to be honoring of it.
Yeah.
You and I are youth pastors, and we've taken many students to camp.
Scary. I was kidding.
Right? But what's scary most is for the parent.
Sure.
Because they're going,
they don't know, do I trust?
Right.
Right. No, I had several testimonies of parents not trusting sending their kids, and then they go and they're like, oh man, it was so worth it. Thanks for doing that. Or opposite, and they were like, they're never going on that again. You know? And I had one or two of those, and it's I get it. I get it for sure.
I had when Celeste and I stepped back into student ministry here, our first youth trip, we took a parent. We had a parent send their kid, and it was the first time their child has been away from mom and dad for more than a couple of days.
Wow.
Ever. And we took them down to the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, to some beautiful and growing campgrounds.
Yep.
And the kid had a blast.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
And I talked to the parent. Part of the reason why the parent dealt with this well is because I have time investment with that parent.
That's good.
I've literally known that parent since I was a child.
Yeah.
Since we were both teenagers. So they knew me. They trusted me.
Yeah.
We have to build that. And when we do that, all of a sudden we could, in theory, lose our child for 3 days.
Sure. It's easy to do at camp. We have a rule that you just come back with the same number of students as you left with. It doesn't matter if it's the same students. As long as it's the same number, you're good.
Yeah.
And
mine is the same number of students, but also no DNA missing from their bodies.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. We'll add that to the list. That's so silly.
But let's continue on because it gets interesting. Verse 46 through 47 says this. After 3 days, they found him in the temple. 3 days. Yeah. Mom and dad have been searching for 3 days. All right. He's been missing for about 5 or 6 days now. They found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. So after several days, they find Jesus in the temple courts. And again, who's at temple courts? Everyone who was there for Passover. Who's there for Passover? The greatest scholastic Jewish minds of the era.
This is so impressive because if you study at all Jewish culture and Jewish heritage, we've really, me and my wife more so than I, have really dived into just trying to understand Bible from a Jewish perspective because we're Jewish, we're Christians, but we were Jewish. Like the law, it all came through Jews, right?
It's a Jewish faith fulfilled.
It's a Jewish faith fulfilled, right? That's a perfect way to say it. And so we've been trying to just kind of open up our eyes to a different way of looking at Eastern way instead of a Western mindset. And these people I get ashamed of how little I know the Bible. When I'm looking at these guys, your average fisherman knew more of the Bible than our scholars in the church today, because they just had such an honor for it, it's important. It is the bread of life, as Jesus would refer to later in his ministry.
Right.
That's what the word is. And here, a 12-year-old, I was amazed the other day. I had a student who's homeschooled, so he came up one Wednesday. He just wanted to hang out with me for the day. And I gave him a little printout of paper. I said, hey, here's 5 or 6 of these. This is how I study the Bible. It's just like 3 little quick, basic Bible study questions that you can answer. That was on a Wednesday. On Sunday, he brought back a folder of them all filled out with little devotions. And he's 13 years old. And I was impressed. I was amazed because I was like, what is this kid? What's going on in this kid's life? And that amazed me.
Yeah. Jesus
is teaching theologians of Jewish law. Like I can barely read Leviticus without falling asleep. These guys knew it word for word and they studied it and they could teach on it so effortlessly. And they're standing there amazed at the teachings of Jesus as a 12-year-old.
Yeah. He's not asking child questions like, did Adam and Eve have belly buttons? Like, that's not the questions he's asking.
I was eating Play-Doh probably at 12.
Like, they're in awe.
Yeah. I mean, it's just wild.
What's coming out of him? And again, I bring this, again, Luke is bringing this to this passage because he needs Theophilus to understand this is who Jesus is. It wasn't that he became an adult and all of a sudden you expect an adult. He had wisdom beyond his ages at 12.
12 years old. He's already figuring it out.
Yeah.
He knows his father. He has spent time. And credit to his parents, as we talked about last week, for raising him the right way and laying that foundation, as we talked this week, laying that foundation of, man, this stuff is important, Jesus. It's going to be important for you. And he just fell in love with it, obviously.
Yeah.
He's God and he falls in love with the Father, but that's still, he's still a man. He's still a 12-year-old boy.
Right.
And he's already got this just great wisdom that's associated with his ministry as a 12-year-old.
So good. Now, things get a little interesting here in a second. Verse 48, it says this, and when his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, son, why have you treated us so? Behold, your father and I have been searching for you in great distress. Mary is scolding Jesus for making them worry.
Yeah.
And I love this so much because this is the moment, it does a great job of humanizing this family.
Absolutely. It's such a real emotion.
I mean, it shows them as real people. I remember my mom lost me for all of 20 seconds. We were at some weird outdoor park or something like that. And I went down a slide and it was downstairs. And all of a sudden I didn't know where they were. I didn't know how to get back to where they were. So I went the opposite direction of where I was supposed to go. So my mom's freaking out because she gets down to where I'm supposed to be and I'm not there.
Yeah.
Apparently she told me to wait and I did not. I'm just going, I got to find my mom. And the first thing she did was, why did you do that? She's upset because there's this fear inside of her. That's so human.
Yeah.
And here is Mary, very human. And I'm sure Joseph was I'm going to take you out and whoop you, son, because you scared the life out of me for the last 3 days.
Yeah.
We don't have that written, but I'm sure that's the emotions.
Yeah, no, right.
And so this is a question I have for you. Why is it important for us to understand that the people in the Bible, even the quote unquote superstars of the Bible, are just normal people like everyone else? Normal people. Why is it important for us to keep that in the forefront of our minds?
Because if it makes it relatable to who we are. I mean, I'm no expert of a parent. I've been mad at my son for stuff like that, and I'm reading this story are they serious? Why would they get mad? It wasn't his fault. You're the adult. And yet I do the same thing. If my son wanders off or he jumps out of the car too quick and jumps in front of a car. I mean, they're children. They haven't fully understood. They don't understand. Why are we getting angry with them? But it's such a human reaction to just life in general that I love that Jesus, God, the Father, uses people who are ordinary to do extraordinary.
Yeah.
And again, it's so that you can see the power of God through their lives. And because there's no perfect person, there's no superheroes in the world. I mean, they're impressive people, but they're not superheroes. And but God uses such ordinary men and women. I mean, all the disciples, just ordinary people that were looked past. The rabbis didn't choose them, yet Jesus later in life chose them. And they do incredible things because of their dependence of the Lord and their understanding of the Lord. And Mary and Joseph are no different. And it's just evident to say, hey, look, we were mad. We wanted to beat this kid, and making mama worry and stress out. What are you thinking?
Right.
And I love Jesus' response to it. It's so perfect.
Let's jump into that because he says this really interesting, starting in verse 4-9. And he said to them, why were you looking for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? And some translations add in the vocabulary of doing my Father's business. And they did not understand the saying that he spoke to them. This is such an interesting aspect because Jesus' response, did you not know that I must be in my Father's house? It highlights something very specific. We know from our conversations about John's birth that the child is supposed to take on the job of the father. That was a whole fight about John being named John and not Zacharias, because according to culture, he was supposed to be named Zacharias. He was supposed to be a Levite in the temple, supposed to wear his father's ephod. That's how it's supposed to work.
Right.
But no, we're going to name him John, something that we don't have a John in the family.
Right.
That was all akin to disowning their child, even.
Right.
And Jesus is like,
no, you're right.
No, I'm going to be in my Father's house.
Yeah.
Doing my Father's business, teaching the world, doing. Now, in the flesh, his father is Joseph. He's a carpenter.
Right.
But here we have Jesus. And this is, again.
I was wondering if you're going to catch it because it says, Mary's response is your father and I have been frantic. And then Jesus' response is, I'm in my Father's house.
Right.
Like he has recognized at this point in the story his call of God on his life. So I was wondering if we were going to cover that.
Yeah.
I had it in my notes to say, hey, bring this up if Dallas doesn't. But you did. You brought it up, and I love it because
Good, I got points.
it's just so like he's recognized. Like, I have an earthly dad here. My dad's wonderful, but he's not compared to my father. I'm about my Father's business. Like, Jesus said, let the dead bury the dead. When the one guy's like, hey, can I come follow you? But let me first go bury my father. He's like, no, be about my Father's. Like, I'm about my Father's business. Right. Not because I don't love my dad or respect my dad. I love him to the moon and back. He's my incredible dad.
And we know that Jesus does become a carpenter. It's not that he just disowns that.
No, he does. He does that and takes care. Some people believe, and reading some commentaries and stuff, that Jesus, maybe Joseph had passed away later in life before the ministry of Jesus, and he had to take care of the family for a little while. I mean, that's one of the theories that's what happened in those years that we don't have anything written in context in the scriptures of what Jesus was doing. But man, he was a good carpenter. You know, he was growing. We'll get to that point in a second. I'm going to do it myself. But I love it. I love that we said that because it's my Father's. I'm in my Father's house. Right. My father might be worried, but that father, I am now following this great plan.
Exactly.
Even as a 12-year-old, he recognized that.
Absolutely. And it's important for us to understand this is one of the first times that Jesus is identifying himself with the Father in heaven. And this is a big deal because one of the predominant arguments against Jesus is that, well, Jesus never said he was God. Well, let's rewind things. The fact that Jesus is saying that his Father is God, because that's what he's saying in this passage, that's heresy.
Yeah, no, that's the beginning of all the naysayers.
Yeah, if he's saying that and he's not, that's heretical.
I'm in my Father's house.
I'm in my Father's house. And he's saying, I am akin to the Father. We are connected. This is it. This is the beginning of Jesus saying, I am God. Yeah. I am divine in this moment. This is the first time we have that said in Jesus' life. And that's something we have to keep in mind. This isn't a story about just like a teacher.
Oh, that's a great point.
I think was it C.S. Lewis that you have to see Jesus as either liar, lunatic, or Lord? Yeah. There's only three options. Was it Lewis or was it
I don't know.
Strobel?
I don't remember. I've heard the phrase, but I don't know who
liar, lunatic, or Lord. That's all we can see Jesus as. Sure. And he's going, I'm Lord. Yeah. Period. Yeah. In a discussion.
He declared it at 12 years old. To mom and dad first.
Right.
Earthly dad.
So good. So good.
I love it.
And then we had this at the very end. They don't understand what he spoke. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was submissive to them. And his mother treasured up all these things in his heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Jesus did everything he was supposed to do. Yep. The reason why he can be our atonement is because he lived a life of a man. Yep. I think it's Galatians that he did not, that it says that he laid down his divinity, put it to the side, and lived as a man. And that's the reason why he was able to do what he did, because he was submissive to his parents. I don't care what the what do they call those? The Gnostic Gospels and these lost documents that are all dated, by the way, hundreds of years after the events, saying that Jesus was disruptive. There's a Gnostic Gospel called the Book of Thomas. Crazy story where Jesus is actually like, literally, he's like zapping birds out of the sky and killing them. And then people are mad. And so Joseph comes and scolds Jesus, and Jesus scolds Joseph for scolding him. Like that is completely anti. What we see here, that he was submissive to them.
Yeah, no, he said, all right, I'll go home with you.
Yeah. He says, let's do this thing. And it says that he increased in wisdom and the stature and in favor of God and man.
That's huge. That's huge. I mean, obviously we know he grows in favor with God. He's the Son of God. He's one with God. But the all in man is great because it's so important that our reputation as a Christians, we should all be growing in favor in our workplaces, in our schools, wherever we find ourselves. Like we should be growing. Now, there'll be people that won't love you because you're a man of God, but that you should have your integrity shouldn't be that reason. You should be a man of the word. You should be a man of our woman. If you stand on the godly principles, they have no fault for me other than you're a Christian and they don't like you.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that there's too many of us that cave to the world's customs and longing to be in a certain standing that we look past integrity. Maybe we slide the tail, we do something a little unethical business in our job or whatever the case would be to try to get a leg up, or we're cutthroat and trying to get that promotion.
Right.
Man, grow in favor with men. Every person that I know really loved Jesus, you can see it on them. I love that person. I adored that person. They're some of my favorite people. I think I mentioned sitting with that lady last week in the hospital, and she, I love her to death. She reminds me of just God's best friend. Like she's somebody that just loves Jesus with all her heart.
Yeah.
And it's so evident. Everybody that knows her loves her.
Yeah.
You can't find a fault in her.
Yeah.
Because she's so committed to who God is. She grew in favor with people, with God first, and then with people, and I think that's great that it's listed that way because you fall in love with God. It should, in return, help your favor with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I like what you said at the front. It doesn't mean that everyone's going to like you necessarily.
Right. No, because people are still going to hate the fact that they hated Jesus, they're going to hate you, right?
Exactly.
That's what Jesus taught.
But at the same time, even if and that doesn't mean something you're a perfect person. You may mess up. You may do something stupid.
Right.
But the key is this: you do something dumb and you go, man, I repent.
Right.
And that's a whole aspect of honoring God more. Dave was a man after God's own heart.
I was about to say the same
Even
lines.
though he was an adulterer, some commentaries suggest maybe he may have been a rapist, and he did all this kind of stuff. But he was a man after God's own heart because he was genuinely repentive.
Yeah.
And owned up to it and walked it out.
Yeah. Honored one of the most celebrated Israel Jewish men in history. You know, and it's amazing that's just how the Lord works. Like he sees your flaws and they're big deals to him. There was consequences that David had to walk through, but at the same time, I mean, you just with the heart to say, God, help me, and the willingness to own your mistakes and embrace your mistakes, trying not to cover them up. And the Lord will use you in incredible ways.
Yeah, and restore you in relationship
and grow
to
you
him.
in favor with man.
So good.
Love it.
Well, guys, that's our conversation through the book of Luke. Thanks so much, man, for not conversation, but Luke 2, chapter 2. But thanks for being part of this conversation, man, for the last 2 weeks. We're going to hear from you guys. How has this encouraged you? Has it challenged you? How can we pray with you? Are you walking through some stuff maybe where you need prayer right now? And maybe you've been challenged about the integrity aspect of things. And maybe you again, the Lord restores. He heals us. And if you need prayer for anything, reach out to us, mediahub@thbshreveport.com. You can check out the Facebook page, Midweek Move. I want to encourage you guys, share this out with other individuals if it's really encouraged you. And let us know how God is moving your life through these. Until next time, have a great week.